right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I am so excited to have this opportunity. I was just telling some of our staff yesterday, this is such an important opportunity for WSOS. Hopefully some of you all are familiar with our organization, but kind of just to give you an overview of what to expect today. We have quite a bit of time, so I'm going to go over a slide deck, but I also want folks to feel like they can ask questions all throughout the time. We have until 11 this morning, so there's plenty of time to ask questions, and it's kind of dense and long, so I want to make sure folks get the chance to ask them as they come up. You can put it in the chat, you can come off mute, whatever works. Sometimes with the chat, it's harder for me to catch, so please come off mute if that works for you. So I'm going to start with the slide deck, and then we'll have time for question and answer. I'm going to talk a lot about WSOS, the organization, and our specific scholarship, but also how it works in the landscape of financial aid. Just because so much has changed in the last few years, and this is a program that was created in statute, so we were really intended to interact with the other financial aid that's available in the state of Washington. So we really want folks to walk away with a sense of how WSOS operates within the landscape and why it's relevant for your students this year, the communities you live in, and how WSOS wants to partner with you in that work of connecting students to our scholarship. So with that, let me go ahead and jump into my slide deck. I'm going to keep monitoring the chat. It looks like lots of folks coming in from all throughout. Oh, Columbia, is that Columbia High School? I was just at Columbia River. Maybe that might be a different one. Muckleshoot Tribal School. Great to have you all. Bothell. Awesome. Okay. Well, excited to have you all. I'm going to jump in. Oh, Ritzville. Awesome. Yes, this is great. So please also take down my name and information. Any follow-up opportunity, we want to come to your school. We want to come work with you. We want to be available at all times to make sure we really are building a network for this scholarship. Okay, I'm going to jump in here. Let's see if I can share my screen correctly. It's always a challenge. Okay, can you all see this? I'm going to go into my presentation mode. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this okay. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship, really here to connect your students to STEM, trade, and healthcare pathways in the state of Washington. So my name is Jessica Monger. I am the External Affairs Director here at the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. I use she, her pronouns. And my work is really connected to both promoting the scholarship, building partnerships to enable students to take advantage of this scholarship, but also I work very closely with the legislature. So you'll hear a lot about this, but the program itself is something created in statute, and we work with the legislature every year because we have a dollar for dollar state match, which is what funds this scholarship. Our program is also based in statute. So anytime we want to make changes to the scholarship, when we've learned something could be working better than it has been, we have to go to the legislature to make those changes. So it is an ongoing relationship with the legislature. So our mission is really to build pathways into high demand Washington careers for Washington students. So what that means is we want students to understand the jobs that are in demand in our economy and how to get there. We know the barriers are still very real for what our students are facing in terms of accessing higher education in the state of Washington. And as you'll hear later explained in the presentation, no more than now is it important for students to access those pathways, to access living wage careers, opportunity, and for our employers to also thrive in the state of Washington. They have they don't have the access they need to the talent pipeline needed to kind of grow and thrive our STEM and high demand trades. So that's really why WSOS was created, to build those connections to Washington careers for Washington students, for Washington employers as well. So I always feel like it's best to start with one of our scholars because no one can embody why this scholarship matters more than our students. So let's hope I did the technology correctly that y'all are going to be able to hear. I'm going to start it, and then hopefully if someone could throw in the chat that they can hear it. I'm going to make sure the sound goes through. Can y'all hear the video? Still no sound? Okay. Hang on for a sec. share computer sound on share option. Okay. Is it that in more? Oh, share sound. There we go. Okay, let's see if this works.
When I was a teenager, I went to school because they served free breakfast. I struggled to survive in a real way, and it was rough. I used to go down to the lake every day because that felt like my safe space, and pretty crazy, right? My safe space is school now. School. I feel safe here. I can go to class without anxiety. I've built bonds with my classmates and teachers. And when I started, I was terrified because I wasn't sure if I'd fit someone like me who felt so different. I wasn't sure if it was gonna work, and it did, and I wasn't as different as I thought. I wanted to make my kids proud, and so I decided I was gonna go into automotive technology because I kind of have a past with cars, and I wanted to do some good in the community. Otherwise, I would have been sentencing my kids to the same life that I had, and I will not do that. I won't. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I had no idea what I was doing. I Googled how to get into school. I didn't have mentors or family or brothers, sisters, anything like that really to turn to. It was never easy, not one moment of it, but it was worth it. And I'd do it again and again and again. The thing that I'm most proud of through all of this is that I got to silence all the voices in my own head that told me that I was not good enough, that I would just be stuck like the Section 8 mom, you know? And I did not want to be that Section 8 mom. I wanted to be more. I wanted to show them that no matter what happens, just keep moving forward. My kids' grades got better when I started school, and they just strive for their grades now. And that's because they saw me putting everything that I had into my craft, because when I got here, I didn't know a ratchet from an open-ended wrench. Failure was not an option once we got started, and I just didn't think that I was gonna smash it. I just was like, we're gonna pass no matter what. I just didn't think I was gonna get 4.0s. When I won the scholarship, it was monumental for me. It gave me the opportunity I was never afforded as a child in the system, to be able to see how far I could go, to show the world what a scholarship, what an opportunity can do for someone, someone like me, someone who didn't even have food, I don't know, someone who didn't have shoes, someone who didn't have family, someone who just needed someone to give them a hand up. It meant a lot to me. This college experience has given me the gift of trusting in myself, knowing that the next step I make is gonna be my best step. My name is Joanna Edwards, and I am a mom and an aspiring automotive technician. I go to South Seattle College, and I am a first generation, about to be college graduate.
Okay. So that is Joanna as she told her story. I love to show that video because I think automatically when folks think of a scholarship and high demand fields and words like STEM, we don't always think of all of the various pathways that exist in our state to get there. And automotive technology is one of those fields that's in super high demand in almost every single region in our state and pays really strong wages. And our community college system has awesome pathways to get there. So I love showing Joanna's story because I think it's just such a great illustration of the power of talking about these different opportunities and connecting our students who all already have this innate talent and interest, but they just don't see this as a viable pathway for them without something like a scholarship or someone saying, hey, I think you can do this, apply, you're worthy, we're ready to support you. So I just love sharing that video. Thanks for watching. It's definitely powerful. So I know I'm preaching to the choir probably here a little bit about why college, but just to kind of ground us in the reality we have in the state of Washington. Most jobs that earn a living wage in the state of Washington require some type of an education after high school. About 70% of the jobs in Washington State that we anticipate opening in the next 5 years will require some type of post-secondary education or training. The Washington economy is somewhat unique in this, in that not only do we require some type of post-secondary education or training for most jobs, most of those also require some type of foundation in STEM. They're not all STEM, but have some type of need for foundational understanding knowledge in STEM. About 68% of those 70 require some type of either STEM education directly or a foundation in STEM. These are also the jobs that are predicted to grow in the state of Washington. This makes sense for a lot of folks, I'm sure. And when you think of the biggest employers in our state, the Microsofts, the Boeing, microchip companies, cloud computing, so many of them are in these STEM fields. So it makes sense that this would be where our economy is going and growing. A college credential can also break the cycle of intergenerational poverty, and it provides access to basic needs. So access to a living wage job is also vitally important if we want to raise the tide for all of Washington communities and Washington families by making sure they have things like access to housing and healthcare. It's through these living wage pathways to careers that can sustain a family, breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty, as Joanna so beautifully illustrated the power it has for her, knowing that she's going to have a job and a career and a pathway that can support her kids and break that cycle for her children, something that she grew up with. She's able to be the change maker in that family. And hopefully we'll see that for generations to come within her family. And that's why we want to bring this opportunity to more students in the state of Washington, because we know it's really powerful. So kind of to ground us in where we're at, some of you may have seen this pathway or this graphic, and I'm sure you have heard the phrase of a leaky pipeline, if nothing else. So in Washington State, it is not an exaggeration to say we don't have a college-going culture right now when you look at the numbers and the amount of students going to school. Oh, yes. I see there's a request for the slides in the chat. Let me see if I can. Sorry, y'all. Oh, you don't want to see my Grammarly account. I will try to follow up with the slides. I don't know if I can figure out how to maneuver to get to them in my presentation. Let me see. I will see if I can do this while continuing to talk. I'm not a good multitasker, as I'm demonstrating in this moment of trying to do two things at one time. I will see if I can get you the slides in just a minute. Okay, so going back to the leaky pipeline graphic, what you see here is the number of students on the left side starting out in 9th grade, 80,000 in the state of Washington. And as we go from 10th to 11th to 12th, right before graduation, almost 10,000 students dropping out of high school right before graduation. And then this big jump of the number of students who graduate but do not enroll in a post-secondary program. And I'm always shocked by that number. And it's a number that actually, despite all of the state of Washington's efforts to try to increase that number, we just really haven't seen it move. And due to COVID and COVID era impacts, we actually saw that number drop even further. It's about 14,000 Washington students not enrolling. And then you see this other massive number, 21,000 students enrolling but failing to complete a credential. And the state of Washington has a goal that 70% of students by age 26 will have a credential by the time they turn 26. So seeing students enroll but not complete is one of those heartbreaking numbers where we know what that means for a student. That means you've invested in your education, but you haven't earned the credential. That's that ticket to that career, that wage, that job, that opportunity, and sort of the pathway to continue learning. And we also know the earlier that students get a credential, the larger their lifetime earnings will be. When you look at the numbers of what does over the course of a lifetime, a high school graduate versus someone with their certificate, associate degree, bachelor's degree, and on, we know those numbers go way up. So we do see, students getting a credential here, this much smaller drop, but it's just very disproportionate to where we need the state of Washington to be. So again, that's, more emphasis for why this scholarship was created and why we're working so hard to partner with counselors and folks like you all who have the connections to students to try and change the narrative and help students understand why there's value in attending post-secondary education and why it's something that the state of Washington is pushing so hard, but also providing so much financial aid and support in. Okay. So what is holding Washington students back? And I would love for folks to throw in the chat what you hear most often, because I think, well, we have research and things that what we hear in the community, we don't have the opportunity as you all do to have the relationship with students. So please educate me on what you're hearing most from students. There was a study recently done by the Gates Foundation, and it's in cooperation with Washington STEM, and I know there's been others, to talk directly to Washington students about what is keeping them away. And will come to no surprise to anyone, costs and the fear of not knowing what they want to study and then investing in an education, or just the sheer cost of attending, post-secondary education is the biggest fear. Yep, just wanting to go to work. We hear that a lot. That's about half of in the one particular study. Students feeling like, hey, I want to just go out and earn money, whether that's to support their family or because they don't know what they want to do. When they see wages at a certain level, they're like, well, I could just go do that versus going to school. Location, not having access to an institution where they're also able to live at home, save money, support their family, provide the resources. Absolutely. Those are other reasons. Another big reason that we're hearing from this generation in particular is wanting hands-on learning. They're not eager to feel like they're just going to go into a classroom and sit. They want a hands-on learning opportunity. Student debt is also a fear, related to cost, where students are just, feeling like they don't want to take on this risk of debt and be strapped with debt in their 20s. So seeing in the chat, yeah, a degree inflation, they don't see value. Absolutely. We're hearing that too. Family pressure to help support the family and just go to work. Absolutely. I'm hearing that a lot. Being away from family, not being aware of college programs, not knowing about scholarships. Absolutely. So I found that there's one study that was done in Yakima, and I believe this was the Gates Foundation as well, where they talked to students, and about 90% of students in the community said that they had an interest in pursuing some type of post-secondary education or training. 90%, which is an overwhelming number, because we know about less than half of students are actually going to do that directly after high school. When they talked to the very same counselors, teachers, they believed, it was less than half of the counselors, teachers believed that the students wanted that. So there's this disconnect of like what students are saying and the information and what they're asking for, and what they're like actually preparing themselves to do. So I think it's really illustrative of what's happening with our students, where there may be this desire, and due to all these other barriers, they're either not vocalizing it, they're not taking steps towards it, or they just don't understand that these opportunities exist. Yeah, seeing receiving doubt from staff when talking about post-secondary education. Absolutely. I think all of these things are a factor, and some of the real things we're combating when we're trying to change the narrative, change access, and increase opportunity for our students. Thanks, folks, for adding all these in the chat. Really great. So now to pivot a little bit just about what this is all about today, about the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. So just to kind of ground you in what makes this different than other financial aid, it's not just the same as any other type of financial aid. Our money is intended to be flexible, and it's intended to follow students. So it's intended to keep our state students in the state of Washington. So if you go out of state, you can't take this money with you. We want to keep Washington talent in Washington state. And we want students to understand that not all degrees are created equal. And that's something that is always a little hard for me to say, because I was someone who, liberal arts, I mean, I studied journalism, comparative literature, and when we talk about jobs that are in demand in the state of Washington, those are not the types of jobs that come up. It is jobs in the STEM, trade, and healthcare fields, and that's where most opportunity is in the state of Washington. So we're trying to prepare our students for those jobs and how to get into them and to make good money. So you'll see a little bit more about our outcome stats later, but just to kind of ground you in, this is really an ability to take a family. So this stat, our recipients earn nearly 3 times what their entire family made. So this is with our career and technical scholarship. they're coming in with their entire family, making about 20,000, and within 1 year of graduating, that one individual is making 60,000. So 3 times what their entire family made. And we see it's about double for our bachelor's degree recipients. So trying to get that message across, like WSOS has the power to do this for you. And here's how we do it. We're also creating pathways for those who are historically left out. It is a true fact that most of the people in the jobs that we're preparing students for are typically white and male. So we are trying to help students of color, first generation students, obviously low income students, and women access these fields where they are going to be, where they have been and are likely to be historically underrepresented in the field. So trying to build those pathways and connections into these fields to change the makeup and make sure that these fields that are really dominating our economy and really have the power to change our future also represent the rich diversity of lived experiences in our state and making sure that's a match there. So that's something we're trying to change, which it really isn't that way right now. Some of our partners are the world's most innovative companies. I already name dropped Microsoft and Boeing, which are our biggest funders. They to date have each donated a little more than 30 million each, and then received a state match. So significant partners, but there's also tons of smaller partners, partners in forestry, partners in construction, healthcare, like really narrow, like nursing associations. We have a ton of partners who see this as an opportunity to invest in young people and make sure young people understand their job is a pathway to one of these high demand fields. So we also graduate students faster and with less debt, because we do this with the intention of not just getting our students to school, but through with mentorship and support services. So we don't do anything in terms of before high school. We rely on you all. But once we get them in, once we get them that application and get them into our program, we want to make sure they have a network, a support system that really gets them all the way through college. And please, folks, make sure at any time if you have questions to jump in the chat. So just again, to kind of ground us in the history of it, this is a program created in the legislature by statute a little over 12 years ago. It was then Governor Chris Gregoire who came together with our board chair is Brad Smith. He's the president of Microsoft. They said, we have a significant talent gap. I have jobs I can't fill. Boeing said the same thing. Hey, we not only do we see in the future, we're going to lose a bunch of people, we have current jobs no one is applying for. We're importing talent. How can we invest the money that we're importing talent with into the state of Washington? This kind of brand new concept of a public-private partnership came together in the form of this scholarship. As far as we know, it's never been done anywhere else. So we like to say we're building the plane as we fly it, because that's absolutely the way it's felt over the last, I've been here since, let's see, it's been about 6 years. And since then, we've gone from a bachelor's program to a community technical college program. We added a graduate program. It's the beauty and the curse of being a program in statute is that legislators see opportunities to fix something and they add it to our statute. And then there we go. We got to implement it. So it's exciting. We've launched more than 8,000 scholars into high demand fields. I expect that number to tick up really soon. The month of November is our reporting month. So by December, we'll have a new report out. I can make sure to follow up so you all have it. It's a report we give to the legislature, and that's when we learn who has graduated, where our students are, what are they doing. So over 14,000 baccalaureate scholars, and it's well over 2,000 now community and technical college students have received the scholarship from WSOS so far. So here is a kind of graphic of the scholarship programs that are available. So we talk a lot about the details of these. Again, throw them in the chat, but I'll try to give an overview of how your students will interact with WSOS. The 2 pathways, or well, 3 really, the 3 pathways that you're going to want to be connecting your students to are the baccalaureate scholarship, the career and technical scholarship, and then for those of you in a rural community, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means, the rural jobs program. You don't have to do anything extra for that one, but it's just more money available to only rural students. So we started 12 years ago with the bachelor's degree program with the intent to provide $22,500 to pursue a bachelor's degree in STEM or healthcare. This is a scholarship that goes with the student to any public or private college or university in the state of Washington. They can start at a community college and transfer They can directly enroll in the University of Washington, Seattle Pacific, any of the state's public or private colleges and universities. They are applying at the time with an interest in STEM or healthcare. So we don't fund all programs. So spending time on our eligible program list is really important as you're thinking about what your students are interested in, and those who want to stay in state. Looking at our eligible program list and checking to see if it's eligible is really important. Like I said, Running Start students can all apply. They can get their associate degree and transfer. There's multiple ways to get it. We just want to know if a student's end credential is a bachelor's degree, we want them to apply for the baccalaureate scholarship. If they know that they want to go direct to finish that 4-year, even if they're transfer pathway, bachelor's degree. For our community technical college students, these are students who they want their end credential to be an associate degree, a certificate, or an apprenticeship. We want them to apply to the current technical scholarship. I'm going to be really honest in this space. Less than 14% of all of our total applicants and probably less than 10% of our selected recipients are coming from high school. That is not the intent of the statute. It's not what the legislature intended. And we have just struggled to get current high school students to see this as a viable pathway, or we're not getting to them. They are seeing this as a viable pathway, but we're not accessing them. And we haven't figured out the right partners to make sure students who are going to a community college to get an associate degree, apprenticeship, or certificate know that they have a scholarship available to them. So there's only one time in the year, and I'll give you these dates, where we're trying to get our high school students to apply and then directly enroll. And it's just been a struggle. And we just have not had success. We are certainly awarding enough recipients, but what we're finding is we're awarding students who are already in college, and they are often quite a bit older. Again, you don't have to be a high school graduate to get these scholarships. Anyone can actually apply. Anyone who doesn't already have a bachelor's degree can apply to any of these, because this is also a tool for reskilling and for building up an economy when some type of industry goes away. This is a reskilling tool. But the legislature really wanted to see it as an incentive to our high school students to directly enroll the following fall after they graduate. And particularly, like I said, with this current technical scholarship, we're just failing as a program to do that. And so I'm pleading with you all to help us understand how to access these students and make sure they see this as a pathway. For folks on the call today who are from rural communities, and this is a funky definition of how the legislature talks about rural. It's basically any county. So if you think about our state's major counties like King, Clark, it's half of the Tri-Cities, Spokane County. I think there's about 7. Everywhere else is actually technically rural. So any of those students, if you are working with a student who is community technical college bound, not for a bachelor's degree transfer pathway, but for one of these, associate degree, certificate, apprenticeships, have them apply. There is a subset of money. They don't have to do anything different when they apply, but basically, a rural school in King County, I'm saying that in the chat. So there are some small schools that also get access to the scholarship. So I can follow up with you to see if you would qualify. It's a funky definition, so I know that's why it's tricky. But if you have a student, regardless for everyone here, if you have a high school student who's thinking about this, their odds of getting it are very, very good if they apply. But they could get access to even more money. So it's a $1,500 per quarter scholarship every quarter until they graduate for the community technical college degree. If you're a rural student, you get $3,500 in your first quarter, $2,500 in your second quarter, and $2,000 every quarter till you graduate. So it's a minimum of $500 extra. And in those first 2 quarters, it's substantially more. And that's because we know our rural students face the biggest boundaries to accessing higher education. So they're traveling the furthest distance. They have the hardest struggles with internet connectivity, etc. So we want to make sure that they have extra money to get them set up and be able to attend. If the student plans to get a degree first and then a BS degree, they should apply for a baccalaureate. Yes, exactly. Even if they're starting at a community college, if you know their intent is to transfer on completion of that AA, you want them to apply for the baccalaureate scholarship. And here's why. If you don't, if they apply for the current technical scholarship, once they get that associate degree, their funding will end. If they're applied for the bachelor program, they can acquire a credential along the way. They can get that associate degree along the way. And if they continue to stay eligible and they transfer to get that bachelor's degree, we will fund them upon transfer. If it's an associate degree, that's the terminal degree of which we will fund, if that makes sense. So that's why when you're talking to your students, you're just getting at what do you want to, get an associate degree and go work for a while? Then the career and technical, that's your pathway. If you want to directly transfer, apply for the bachelor's degree. Hopefully that helps. And Sonia, I saw that note. I will try to get you more details. Whatcom County does meet our rural. That is the one county that actually has a population size that shouldn't qualify, but you had a helpful legislator in your district who made an exception in our statute. So Whatcom County is rural. So students would be able to access the Rural Jobs Program. And again, they don't do anything different to identify themselves. We identify them in the process. And it is both, the current technical scholarship is over 1,000 programs that are eligible. A subset of those are eligible for rural funds because we're also trying to keep rural residents in rural communities. So we're funding programs that are rural in that community in the hopes that they're looking at that eligible program list and they're picking something that is rural high demand in that community so that they can stay there. Because what we have a phenomenon that makes sense is that you have students who have to leave their rural community to go get the education and then they're not coming back. And so then you're losing that opportunity to build that sector, that workforce in that rural community. So we're trying to incentivize going to school, get access to the education, but returning back home and continuing to help that rural economy grow. I won't go into the details of this, but if you know any current nurses, especially nurses in the second year of their nurse practitioner program, they do get access to a $25,000 scholarship plus money for their practicum, for travel, trying to increase the number of nurses looking to become a nurse practitioner because that is a career in the state of Washington that is super high demand, really high value for our state, and that a nurse practitioner can really help fill critical healthcare needs, especially in rural and underserved areas of the state. So we do have one $25,000 graduate level scholarship available. If anyone has an interest, wants to learn more about that, please ping me. I'm happy to give you more information in case you know someone in your community who could be of interest. We're always looking for more kids for that scholarship as well. Okay, so more than financial aid, I have a graphic coming up that will kind of describe a little bit more of what I mean by this when it comes to the nuts and bolts. But in general, what I want you to hear and be able to pass along to your students, WSOS is designed to work with the state's robust financial aid to ensure that funding is available, not just for tuition, because tuition is getting covered by things like the Washington College grants or the Pell grants. We are your source of funding for things like transportation, housing, childcare, food. The goal, pardon me, as the legislature knows, we're preparing students for competitive fields. If you're going to the University of Washington and you're trying to get into that computer science program, it's going to be more than a full-time job to get into that program. So we don't want our students having to stack a bunch of part-time jobs in order to compete in these engineering, computer science, automotive technology, the list keeps going fields, because we know they're demanding and we want to get students in and through as quickly as possible. So this is a way to help cover things like tools. Welding is, I always use welding as an example. It's about $1,500 of tools before you even go to your first class. For a lot of students, that's not going to happen. They're not going to come up with that money. And so automatically that field becomes really difficult to find a way to get into. So this is a way to pay for those high cost tools so that students have what they need to focus and compete in these programs that are often very competitive themselves. We know that this flexibility is one of the reasons that our students are graduating on time and with less debt. And even though we have not done a great job of recruiting high school students, our community and technical college graduation rate is like 3 times the rate in the state of Washington and the national average, because what we're finding is students just need money. They just need more money to live. And once they have it, they get through their program much faster. It's because they're having to juggle the job, the family, etc., and they don't have the funds to cover those living expenses. That means they have to take their coursework so much slower. And we don't have time in the state of Washington. Our employers are eager and hungry for these jobs. And so they will, they're not able to, they want to fund this program so that our students can get to and through much faster and they can be ready for hire. So how does it all work and how does it all stack? So what do I mean when I say this money is intended to be flexible? So again, I know y'all probably know a lot about this, but just an overview. We have different types of financial aid. So we have grants like the Washington College grant. It's now an entitlement. So that's new as of a few years ago. So now you can look, working with your high school students, at their income, and you can see, what their family can contribute and what they are entitled to receive as a Washington College grant recipient. So that's guaranteed money if they're income eligible, to receive some support for financial aid. Pell Grant is similar. It's based on the money that you get. It's a grant. You don't have to pay it back, and you're entitled to receive it. Obviously, then there's loans, money that must be paid back, often with interest. Work study, the part-time work offered by the government, college, or university. And then scholarships, money that isn't paid back, often based on merit or financial need. So WSOS is a scholarship. Don't have to pay it back. Often, another question I get all the time is, like, what if my student wants to go in and then they change their mind? We won't make them, if they change their mind and they end up saying, I actually want to become, I want to study English, we won't make them give us the money back. It's a scholarship. They don't have to pay it back. But that's why we really want to be sure the student has an idea of what they want to study. And we assess that in the application process. So when you look at, and this looks so different for every student, but this is just to kind of give you a sense of how this works. When you look at the true cost of college, so we use Eva as our example of, she has costs like tuition is, $12,000, housing and food, $14,000, personal expenses, transportation, books and supplies. And she has unmet need over 5 years. And we're saying that Eva is attending the University of Washington. We know that Eva qualifies for the maximum Pell Grant, the maximum Washington College grant. Now, this is really important. We want you to hear this part. So there's great scholarship programs like Seattle Promise, like Husky Promise, that do provide money, a promise of financial aid, but many of them are pegged at tuition, and they're not able to go beyond tuition or what we do, which is go up to cost of attendance. And so that piece is what's really important. That's how we are able to say, hey, if you qualify for the maximum Washington College grant and the Pell Grant, you're getting money that is enough to cover your tuition, fees, tools. If you're going to live on campus, maybe your housing in the dorms, but you're still going to have this unmet need. And that often looks like the transportation, the personal expenses, etc. So WSOS can go up to cost of attendance. So as you're working with your students and you're trying to help them see and do the math of, hey, you're going to get, this amount from the Washington College grant, but how are you going to pay for transportation, a car to get around? How are you going to pay for your food without taking on a bunch of debt? That's how applying for WSOS can be really important, because we started to get I'm going to get the Washington College grant. I don't need to apply for this. Helping them understand the true cost of college and how financial aid stacks together, and how something like WSOS, for purposes of calculating financial aid, we're considered private. And that means we can go up to their cost of attendance. So for a lot of our students, what it looks like is they're getting all of this state or federal aid to cover all of what we owe the college, or what they owe the college. And then WSOS stacks on top. And for a lot of students, that's a check. Basically, if they didn't have any other on their sort of account when the financial aid officer is trying to apply all of their money, if there's nothing else left to pay for it, the remainder of our scholarship gets dispersed to them as a check that they can cash, that can be what they live on for that quarter. And then they're going to get another disbursement the next quarter. And again, that's how they can use that money flexibly to cover their living expenses. So I'm going to pause there for a second, see if there's any questions. Okay, hopefully this is all clicking and making sense. We have found that, just to be really candid, sitting in many, many hearings at the legislature and a part of many conversations with the amazing folks at the Washington State Achievement Council, racking our brains that major changes like the Washington College grant, it becoming an entitlement, I guarantee we haven't seen much of any uptick in FAFSA WASFA completion or enrollment. We still have a huge enrollment crisis in the state of Washington. And part of it is because this stuff is so complicated. It doesn't really make sense. You're like, it's an entitlement. What does it mean? So we're trying to break it down for students in making sense of like, oh, okay, so this is how it all works. This is how it stacks together. Again, I wish this wasn't complicated. I want to name that it still is too complicated, but the money does exist. And so that's what we really want students to hear and have that translate to their families too, where we know that's another barrier is that if a student understands it, but they can't explain it to their parents and they still need their parents to turn over really personal, deeply personal financial aid or financial information, IDs, all these things that can make people feel really uncomfortable and they don't understand what they get in return. Of course, it makes sense we have a FAFSA-WASFA completion rate that's among the lowest in the United States of America. So that's what we're trying to do is just kind of remove the cloak of confusion about how all this works and have students get to understand how it all works, why it's important, and how it stacks. So please holler if you have questions. I know it's confusing, but hopefully this helps kind of illustrate of, are you sure WSOS matters or are you sure my student needs it? Because this helps kind of illustrate the cost of attendance is still really high. And so having the money that can stack is really how we make it all work. So to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the timing, why this matters, I'm going to really frame a lot of this for your high school seniors, but harkening back to that study I mentioned from Yakima, students said, we want to know about financial aid early. Like, tell me about it in 9th grade. I don't think our students are necessarily, when I'm meeting with them, I'm not gathering that, but that's what they're saying is they want to know about this early and often. And so trying to think about how do you talk, I'll frame a lot of this for our high school seniors because obviously this is most relevant for them. This is the year we want them to apply, but be thinking about how this can be weaved in obviously early and often for our students. So there's a ton of great resources. Hopefully y'all are very familiar with these and you've seen them. I just put a few of my favorites just because I feel like they're really well done. They're beautiful. Obviously, spend time on the rebranded Washington Grant website. That's the Washington College Grant. Making free college or career training possible. So they've rebranded a little bit to try to increase awareness. Gear Up has an amazing website just with, same with Ready, Set, Grad. Students can kind of design their own pathway of like, this is what I'm thinking, and different things will pop up. I love to have students spend time on that because we want them to hear obviously about WSOS, but if anything, I want students to mostly hear they must complete the FAFSA or WASFA. So I'm going to say that again. WSOS is not possible if students do not fill out the FAFSA or WASFA, unfortunately. And so less than half of Washington State high school students complete the FAFSA or WASFA, so automatically less than half can apply for WSOS. It's a huge barrier, and what we know for this year's seniors is that we don't really know what exactly is happening and when we're going to get the opportunity to fill out the FAFSA, and then subsequently when the WASFA comes out in the state. So huge barrier for us. I'm going to name that we're really concerned just about what this means because our application period isn't changing. So it just means our high school seniors have less time to complete the FAFSA or WASFA. It's the #1 reason students are not eligible for WSOS. When we get our applicant pool back in the information, it's because they didn't complete the FAFSA or WASFA and we cannot award them the scholarship. So for us, it's super important that we are partnering with you all. If you all have questions, need support, we're not necessarily WASFA FAFSA experts, but we know people who are and we can connect you to them. And we're always happy to couple a scholarship night, a financial aid night with one of those partners. So we can talk about the scholarships, and I can talk, beyond just WSOS because there are the WAVE scholarship is another one that's a state of Washington merit-based scholarship, funds similar fields. Just a range of scholarships. But again, so many of these are not possible without students completing the FAFSA or WASFA. So for us, it's a huge issue, and we spent a lot of time talking about it with counselors, students, families, etc., because it automatically lowers our eligible applicant pool by so much because it's just something that's not done to the degree we need it to in the state of Washington. So in case you hadn't, you're not convinced yet, the WSOS model is really proven to work. So our scholars are 64% less likely to leave school between their first and second year. Our graduation rate, almost 80% compared to a national average of 60%. They're twice as likely to graduate in 4 years for the bachelor's program. They're earning 14% more than their peers, and that's students from similar backgrounds studying similar fields. So I always think that's interesting. It's like the same student going into computer science is making 14% more because they went through our program. Part of that, we think, is because we have connections to all of the state's and best employers, and we're really working hard with our employers to use us as their talent pipeline. So partner with us to get your interns, partner with us to provide a career like externship or a job shadow, etc., and then hire them. So we're really excited about that, to see, like, not only do we know we're preparing them in good fields, in the field that they go into, they're able to earn 14% more, which is really exciting. I've already mentioned this one. 5 years after graduating, our baccalaureate scores are earning twice what their family did. So when they're starting, they're have a salary of about $45,000. Within 5 years, they're graduating, or pardon me, their salary is over $90,000. So again, just a huge opportunity to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty in our communities. So to be eligible, this is where kind of nuts and bolts all hit. So I'm gonna frame WSOS, but also within the other financial aid that exists in the state of Washington, so you have a sense of like what your student is qualified for with us, but also with other programs. So they have to be a Washington state resident. When we say Washington state resident, that typically means, and the best way I would communicate it to your students is that they will be considered in state for purposes of tuition. So if they're planning to go to WSU Vancouver or UW, WSU, etc., and they're going to get in-state tuition, then they're likely a Washington state resident. It generally means having lived here for a year. It can get more tricky if we're not talking about high school students, and I can give you the eligibility statute if that's helpful. But typically for high school students, that's an easy way to look at it. They need to earn a high school diploma or GED from a Washington state institution. So GEDs work great as long as it's a Washington state institution, high school diploma. This is specific for the bachelor's program. If you were working with a high school student who's, and this has happened many times actually, a high school student whose parent is like, well, can I apply for this? Absolutely. For the Career and Technical Scholarship, they do not have to have a high school diploma or GED from a Washington State institution. It can be from anywhere. They just need a diploma or GED. For the bachelor's program, it needs to be from Washington State. So hopefully that is clear. For the bachelor's degree program, applicants need a 2.75 cumulative GPA. For the Career and Technical Scholarship, there's no GPA requirement whatsoever. And of course, they need to be pursuing an eligible program. There's over 100 STEM and healthcare majors at the bachelor's degree level. It's okay if your student does not know exactly what they want to study when they're applying for either program. For the Career and Technical Scholarship, they can be working towards prerequisites, or they can say, I think I want to go into automotive technology, but I might not, or accounting or bookkeeping or any of the healthcare fields. Those are all eligible. Just kind of give you a sense of the range of eligible programs. The community technical college level, there's over 1,000. Pretty much any single healthcare program, phlebotomy, medical technician, ultrasound technician, all of those are eligible. All of your nursing programs are eligible. Automotive technology, mechatronics, anything in the engineering space, really at both the community technical college and the bachelor's degree level is typically eligible. So, any type of engineering. In the computer science IT space, you can also find almost all of those programs are eligible. Anything also, let's see, what am I missing? Natural resources, forestry technician, watershed management, those are all typically eligible. Trying to think of other programs that folks don't think of. Teaching, so particularly STEM teachers, very high demand in the state of Washington. So we particularly want to fund students who want to become a science, health, education, math teacher, etc. Those are all high demand and eligible for our bachelor's program. Feel free to throw in the chat if you're thinking of a program, if you have something in mind what a student wants to pursue, and I can let you know if they're eligible. But you can also spend time on our website, and I can walk you through this of looking at the eligible programs as well. Okay, so going back to eligibility for our career technical scholarships, no GPA requirement, just need to be pursuing an eligible program. It's also okay if the student needs remedial coursework. We will fund their remedial coursework. If they're like, I want to go into bookkeeping and they find that they're not ready for college level math, we will fund them until they get into the college level math and can start their program. Same thing with the bachelor's degree. The students change their mind on their major all the time. And we know that's only fair to expect that, an 18, 19-year-old is going to change their mind a couple of times. As long as they stay in their program, stay eligible, meaning they continue to pursue an eligible program, it's okay to change their mind. We also have flexibility in terms of we support students for longer than their program length. So we expect that our students may need to take their coursework slower, or they may have a term or two for family or personal reasons that they have to take off. So we've built into our eligibility flexibility to allow students to complete the programs as they can and to take longer than it's needed to. So this can be kind of confusing, but basically 125% of program duration, or it could take you 25% longer to complete that associate degree, and we'll continue to fund that student. Oh, apologies. This says June 6th. It should not say. They need to complete the FAFSA or WSPA by their application deadline. So that's where, for our high school seniors for the bachelor's program, that feels particularly tricky. And I'm going to put up the actual dates in a different slide. By the time, so whenever you're working with a student, you need to look at what is the application deadline for that cycle, and their FAFSA or WSPA must be completed by then. Again, for our high school seniors, we know that's really tough considering it's still not out and we don't know exactly what it will look like and all the detail of all the changes until it comes out sometime in December. And I keep hearing it's going to be the end of December. So we know that's going to be tough. We are here to help. We're here as a resource. Also, one of the biggest, this is a need-based scholarship. It's merit in terms of how we, there's things that we will value higher in the selection process, but it is need-based to be eligible. So what that means is, unlike other programs, we are low to middle income, which is up to 125% of median family income adjusted for family size. So as a frame, we don't know the number exactly. We should know it really soon. We're waiting for the state to give it to us, but we're expecting a family of four. Anyone would be eligible for a family of four making under, I expect this to actually be 145,000, maybe a little bit higher or lower, but that's roughly the range. So anyone lower than that, middle income, would be eligible. As a reminder, in the state of Washington, the Washington College Grant funds an award amount up to the cost of in-state tuition for anyone under 70% median family income. So this goes up to 125% median family income. And I believe the Washington College Grant maxes out at 100%. So we fund an additional 25% of students in that middle income range who might not be getting any other state or federal grants or aid. And again, our scholarship stacks with other aid that they're getting. So if they're getting any other private scholarships, we will work with it. The financial aid officers will stack it to make sure it's accessible. So that going up to middle income can really help some of your students who are on that cusp of, hey, college is really expensive. I'm not among the lowest income, but I still need a way to fund this. So please stress WSOS for those students in particular, because we want them to hear the state knows it's still hard to complete college and pay for it in that middle income range, and here is money to support it. I'm going to pause there. The eligibility section is always, highly detailed. See if there's any questions. Yes, of course. I will definitely send the slides out. Happy to do that. Thank you for joining. Okay, so where can students study? I've mentioned this in a past slide. Tons of options here. We have so many colleges and institutions in the state of Washington. They can also be on a virtual campus because a lot of particular community technical college programs have online components, as does at the bachelor's degree level. So the 6 public four-year college and universities, there's the upper map. This is where all of our state's 34 community and technical college campuses are. I want to be clear here, in the community technical college program, it's only eligible at our state's community technical colleges. So there are 34 of them, as I mentioned here, and some of them have multiple campuses, like Pierce College is one example. They've got like 4 campuses, but it is not eligible. Feel free to throw it in the chat if you're like, is this one eligible? But I know there's like a few in the Tri-Cities where it's the only eligible college for the community technical college program in the Tri-Cities is Columbia Basin College. In Yakima, it's Yakima Valley College. In Spokane, it's Spokane Community College, but there's also Spokane Valley. In Vancouver, it's Clark College. A little bit up the road, it's Lower Columbia College. So it is not all colleges. While we do support, we are eligible for the bachelor's program as private colleges and universities for the bachelor's program, where you can go to Whitman College or Walla Walla or Gonzaga and get WSOS. That is not true for the community technical college program. So hopefully that'll make sense. If you have a question, please let me know. For the community college, it is the community college system. Perry does not. Yes, that is the one that I get so often. Whatcom Community and Bellingham Technical College, both eligible. Those are both part of the states. Perry Tech is not, and I know that is a huge college that a lot of students find a lot of success in, and unfortunately is not eligible. It is in those regions, it's Columbia Basin and Yakima Valley, because those are the state's 34 community technical colleges. So happy to help folks do the math or think about whether applying for WSOS, getting the Washington College grant is a better use of funds for, or, more affordable, I should say, not a better use of funds, more affordable, but unfortunately, yes, we are limited to the colleges affiliated with the State Board for Community Technical Colleges. I've mentioned this before, over 1,000 high demand programs eligible for CTS, nearly 100 high demand bachelor's degree programs, wide range. Also, it can be tricky when you're working with a student. They might not know. It's good for them to check to see if their eligible program is offered. Not all colleges have the same list of programs, and I know that may seem obvious to some of us, but we have found that can be confusing for students. They see our eligible program list, but it doesn't mean that it's eligible at, or it's even offered at their institution. And particularly for our community technical college list, that program is always changing and moving in terms of colleges are always adding programs. And there are many apprenticeships that actually are affiliated with the community technical college campus that are eligible. We get hardly any apprenticeship applicants. It's a huge push in the state of Washington to fund these students, but there's just a lack of awareness of that these programs exist for a lot of students. So if you have someone interested, I'm happy to help connect you, share who I know, what programs exist, because it's, again, a huge push. And we know these apprenticeship programs can be amazing in the sense of they're getting money from the apprenticeship program, they're getting our money, they're getting a Washington College grant, and they're also guaranteed a job once they complete. So there's a high value in a lot of those programs, but really low interest in applicants coming particularly from the high schools, just because there's a wide variety of programs. So we're really interested in funding apprenticeships if you have students interested in that pathway. Okay. So key dates for 2024. So the first one, I know these are in like flip order. January 2024 is when our bachelor's degree scholarship opens. It opens January 10th, and it's going to close on Leap Day. So we're giving our seniors an extra day. I know it doesn't make up for all of the other things, but so typically always open the last day of February. So it closes this year on the 29th of February. That's the $22,500 for a bachelor's degree, regardless of where you start. Career and technical scholarship. For those of you who are familiar with us, you may remember that this always opens chronically late. It typically opens in April and closes in June. And I know immediately you're like, okay, how am I going to get a senior to apply for something in June when they're like ready to go by then? We are hoping to move that to March or April and select in April or May. There's a lot of back end work that we're trying to work out, so we haven't nailed down that number. But if you're thinking about your students and they are interested in community technical college pathway, it's going to open after the bachelor's degree, but we really want them to apply. And another thing I want you all to hear, we're also really interested in celebrating our community technical college recipients. So we want you to know who at your school has been awarded these scholarships, and we can actually, as counselors and teachers, we can give you a list. We can give you access to this dashboard that will show you all of your students from your school who have started an application and everyone who has started and submitted. So as we get closer to the applications for either the bachelor's degree or the current technical scholarship, as you're closer to that deadline, you can push those students to say, you have not completed or you have not started. And that is so successful. I mean, we send messages, emails, texts, anything to get them to complete, but nothing works to get those completions like the counselors themselves pushing the student and saying, oh, Miss So-and-so came up to me, I got to finish this. Also, sometimes students just, the technology isn't, our application isn't as savvy as we'd like it to be. And so they think they submitted, but they didn't. So it's a great way to be like, hey, you still have to finish XYZ. So please reach out to me if you want to be added. There's some paperwork, very simple, that you have to fill out to get access to that dashboard. And then once you do that dashboard, I will also send you a list of here's all your students that were selected. So you can celebrate them at the senior nights, at the scholarship nights. And we really want both programs to be recognized to increase awareness in your community, particularly about that career and technical scholarship, so that folks get a chance to celebrate, and hopefully younger siblings, etc., can hear about it and apply the following year when they become eligible. So these are the key dates for this year's seniors. You can expect our application for the bachelor's degree will always open in January, always close in February, and the career and technical scholarship will hopefully always be a spring open and close. So again, we have time by June to know who is selected and celebrate them at their senior financial aid scholarship night. Okay, so the place you're going to want to spend the most time, applicants, and then there's baccalaureate scholarship, career and technical scholarship, or you can start with the apply for a scholarship. So with the baccalaureate scholarship, it's going to load slowly. This page, here's the key information here on the left side. Deadlines, is the baccalaureate scholarship right for you? How to apply, eligibility. So when you're working with a student, you can always come here to say, which one do I want to apply for? Think in helping them consider, what's my end credential? Which one should I apply for? Are you eligible? So these are the things they have to do. They have to complete an eligibility check. It's part of the application. It's really simple. It's just going to ask them like yes, no questions. As long as they answer it correctly, we'll say, yes, you're eligible. You should apply. They have to create an account. Again, it's pretty simple, online application. We tell students you could get it done in as little as a half an hour. Most students spend about an hour completing the application. Could be, a little less, a little more. Submitting the FAFSA or WSPA, they have to submit an unofficial transcript. And let me tell you, this is, again, the second highest reason that students can't complete is understanding what they should do. So we have this guide. If you're working with a student and you have questions, try to get them to not wait till the nth hour so that we're able to figure out what they need. But they do have to submit an unofficial transcript. Everything else is inside the application. So everything else, there's no extra features besides that one. And screenshots are okay. They can't send a screenshot. How do I make sure that I'm eligible? There is this helpful list of things. So this is the STEM or healthcare major. This is a place that and I'm happy to send these as individual links for folks. This is all of the eligible majors. So you can see here a ton, mathematics, aerospace, biology, chemistry, city, urban, community, regional planning, civil engineering. The list goes on. Here's some of our teaching, etc. So you can also have them search, I'm just going to nursing, would be one example to see. CIP code, classification of instructional program, that is like a really in the weeds term. Your students don't need to know that, but for you, that can be helpful to try to figure out where this program is offered in the state of Washington. It can be helpful. So that's the list of eligible major programs. Here's the college or university must be eligible. This is for the baccalaureate program. Again, all of the 2-year institutions are eligible that are affiliated with the state of Washington. And then here's the eligible 4 years. So this is where there's a little bit more flexibility. So Bastyr University is eligible. Some ones you might not think of. DigiPen is also another eligible institution beyond just the ones you might automatically think of like our state's public 4-year institutions. So there's a few more details. This guide will be updated. This isn't the most up-to-date version, so I can follow up with that. It just is some examples of the possible answers for short answers. Again, we don't score for essay, grammar, or writing ability. We just want to know what the student is interested in, and particularly for this one, the question is always related to something like, what have you tried to confirm your interest in this field? And it can be a wide range. I mean, great answers have been things like, hey, I've always loved to tinker. I started taking apart computers and whatever, when I was young, or I love to on YouTube. I got super interested in coding because I was watching YouTube videos. It does not need to be super elaborate about their experience. It can just be something that they've come across. We just want to know they've tried something. So have they been a part of a club? Have they watched the YouTube videos in their spare time? What have they done? Have they been a part of a camp? That we often get the stories related to, like, someone in my family had a healthcare crisis, and so that's why I want to become a nurse. A better, something we'd want to connect them to is like, in my biology coursework, I was inspired to become a nurse, and then in my biology coursework, I was able to really test this passion and whatever it may be. Like, we want to know what they tried to kind of indicate this is a good fit for them. There's an FAQ section that can be really helpful for students. That a lot of this is when they're a current student, but if you have any questions about, like, for example, I often get, well, what if this kid is coming from a Running Start program and they're going to have a bunch of credits? We love Running Start students. Basically, what it means for that student is they're probably going to get up to a higher award amount faster. So when our students come in at the bachelor's level, they're getting a $2,500 scholarship until they get into their major. Then we double it to $5,000, and then they could get $5,000 twice and up to $7,500 for a fifth year as needed. We find most students do, particularly in these fields. If a Running Start student comes in with a bunch of credits, they'll probably just get to that $5,000 faster because they're going to get into their eligible major faster because they already had credits that they brought in. So that's one of the reasons we find. Or one of the biggest questions that we get. So I'm going to also spend a little time in the career and technical scholarship page. Again, this is applicants, and then you're going to career and technical scholarship drop down. It looks really familiar. The deadlines for this one are rolling because we know our community technical college students are enrolling at different times throughout the year. For your high school seniors, they're going to want to apply to the application that is fall enrollment. So like I said, we haven't nailed down these dates. We're still kind of tweaking them, but it's likely going to be March or April, and then they get selected and funded beginning, and then they enroll in the fall. For folks just in your communities and your lives, there's also basically the quarter before, we always have an application. So another application is going to open in January for students who are getting funding for spring quarter. So it's going to open in January, close in February for any students enrolled in spring quarter. So you can also tell this to your students if they're like, hey, I'm taking the fall off, or I think my program starts in the winter. They can apply at a different application cycle, and they can pretty much always count on the quarter before is when their application is going to open. This all should look very familiar to the other one. Are you eligible? Less information is needed for the career and technical scholarship. They still have to complete the FAFSA or WSPA and the application, but they don't have to submit that unofficial transcript. They also have a guide and a short answer, and I know this one is accurate because we have already, we're already in the cycle for this year. So the short answer questions are right here. What was, or we basically asked them a significant experience that challenged them academically or personally. What was the challenge? What steps did you take to overcome it? How might you apply similar strategies? This is really about grit. We find the higher score here, it leads to high in terms of our actual applicants and the scholars, the higher their score related to overcoming challenges, the much more likely they are to persist in the program. So it's one factor of many that we use in our competitive application cycle to help score. And we also provide sample answers so they can come right here and see, what do I need to put here to, what's a good answer look like to get some inspiration. Another thing that you will probably, a place you'll want to spend some time in is this eligible program list. There's tons here, and they're by institution. So you can search for a number of ways. You can say, okay, I want to see what's all eligible at Clark. Or you could look at it like, let's see, where's web design offered throughout the state? And you'll see, oh, okay, look at all these colleges, all these various web design programs. There's so many programs that are eligible, so I really encourage you to spend some time here because there's a ton. Let's see. And then Also, there's a handful of programs. This is really small. AJAC is one of them. Programs that are not connected to this is the one exception to the must be one of the state's 34 community technical colleges. There are a few apprenticeships, I think there's only two, AJAC is one of them, that have gone through the process to be eligible for Washington College Grant. We can support those students. So if AJAC sounds familiar or you know a student who's interested, reach out to me. I can help them understand. Here is the list of the here's for the rural resident, you live in any Washington County except King, Pierce, Snohomish, Kitsap, Thurston, Clark, Benton, and Spokane. Anyone outside of those counties, your students may be eligible for rural jobs funding if they're headed to the community technical college route. There is also be a high school graduate from a district with fewer than 2,000 students and be enrolled in one of the state's community technical colleges located in rural county. So again, this is really nuanced, but it may apply to a few of you. So feel free to take a look to see if this means your students could be eligible for rural funding. Happy to answer questions too if you need help. Okay, so going back up, just making sure that there's nothing else that you all could benefit from. There is one other section that I will send to you all as a follow-up. That is just a place where we have our logos, blurbs that you can copy and paste to throw in newsletters. You can find it, I believe, get involved, partner resources, just so that you sent it, promote a scholarship is right here. So this is a page anyone can access at any point that has our logos right here. What do you want to promote? Here's some language that you can, steal at any time. All the eligibility information, things for social media, flyers, one-pagers, etc. We're happy to provide that at any time. Okay, and then one other thing that I wanted to mention, just to kind of give folks an understanding of, so we will select at least 1,200 recipients for both scholarships this year. I would say on average for our baccalaureate scholarship, we get between 2,000 and 3,000 applicants. For the community and technical college students, your high school students, I would say we will select over 700 students to get funding for this fall. And if they apply, they have a really good chance of getting it if they're eligible. Just in case, we try not to give students too much detail because we don't want to overwhelm them, but just for your background, there is eligibility. So to be eligible, you have to apply to get this. And then there's another set of criteria we use to select students. So we typically prioritize students who are lowest income first. So while you can be up to middle income, we prioritize need-based. So I would say that is one of the criteria that's prioritized. We also tend to prioritize first-generation students. So in the state of Washington, you can't prioritize any of the protected classes. So anything like race, sex, demographic, you cannot put a priority on that. But we can on things like first-generation status. So that's one way we're able to prioritize. And then otherwise, their short answer questions can be a way to boost their score. And sometimes different programs are preferenced more. That's less true for the community technical college scholarship, but that could be for the baccalaureate scholarship. Okay, trying to take a look at, I will absolutely share my my contact information. I'm going to put that everyone in the meeting so you all can see it. FAFSA or WSOS students both come with lower income first. Yes, so essentially we allow for, I will happy to share the slides with everyone. I can follow up over email, share the slides, and then for students, for FAFSA, if the student for some reason or their family cannot complete the FAFSA form, we encourage them to submit the WSFA form. We do not see any of the information that is submitted. The WSAC gives us, WSAC is the Washington State Achievement Council. They basically can confirm eligibility, but that is it. There's no difference in terms of which they apply to. The state still gets the information in the same way. It's just different forms depending on what a student is able to fill out. And particularly, we find many of our undocumented students and families are completing the WSFA. And we expect that will come out soon after the FAFSA once they see it. Yes, please explore our website. And students, once they are in the program, great question. They do not need to reapply every year. Once they're in as long as they stay eligible. There's a few things that they have to do every year, like they have to complete like a simple form that basically says they're continuing to make progress on their eligible program. They have to let us know when they get into their major. That's how we can increase their scholarship. But the money stays with them as long as they stay eligible in their entire academic career. So before I forget, I'm going to add my email here. Any other questions coming up for folks? And I'm going to put my cell phone as well so that you can feel free to, I know, especially on deadline days, that sometimes the text is the fastest way. You can always do that. There also are real people who will answer this email every single day. It's the info@opportunityscholarship.org. That's also a great way to get a hold of someone here at WSOS. I also want to throw out there that we have been on the road a lot. Next week I'm in Vancouver for a couple days, and the following week I'm in the Tri-Cities. We love to attend your college and career fair nights. We are open to doing this like specific visits. We like to make sure that there's going to be at least 30 students or so in attendance, and if so, we're happy to come to your school, do an info session, present in partnership with the state, with WSAC, with amazing organizations in your community like College Success Foundation, etc., to talk about financial aid opportunity. If you have Gear Up folks on your campus or Trio folks on your campus, we're also happy to do what we call a train the trainer. It'd be a shortened version of this where I'm just walking through the application and training your staff or partners, the folks in your school that have the relationships with students, on how to get your students to apply. We do a ton of those when we have an open application cycle. Would be happy to do that. Please reach out at any time if you have an interest in that. Yeah, and otherwise, we're just available for questions, whether it's this or any other financial aid. Trying to make sure I didn't miss any other questions in the chat. I don't think so. Anything else coming up for folks? We also do generally, if we can, we have liked to present the scholarship at your financial aid or scholarship nights. We try to do as many of those as we can. It can be hard because they all happen right at the same time. But at the very least, we want to make sure you have the names of all of your selected recipients, so we can always provide that so that they can get awarded. Any other questions coming up for folks? And if there's anyone who joined late, I am happy. I know this was recorded, but please feel free again to email me if a section came up and you have more thoughts. But otherwise, I think this pretty much wraps up.